welcome to another episode of Off the Shelf. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite things, horror movies. So I've got a whole bunch for you. I have to tell you, it was really hard to narrow down my list because I wanted to pick things that maybe weren't the first things that come to mind for people. I don't want to sit here and tell you about all the movies that you've seen 50 times. I don't want to be like, hey, you should go see Chainsaw Massacre, and you should see Saw, and Amityville Horror, and, Poltergeist, and things like that. Like, those are all great movies, don't get me wrong, but I wanted to try to branch out a little bit. The other thing that I tried to do here was to pick a variety of styles of horror movie. Anybody who watches horror knows there's a whole bunch of different subgenres. You've got monster movies, you've got sci-fi horror, you've got psychological thrillers, you've got occults and slashers and all kinds of things. So I tried to pick a variety here for you. I hope there's something that you haven't seen or that you feel like you need to revisit, especially since it's the middle of October and this is the time to do it. So let's get started. Oh, also, please ignore my mask lines here. This is what happens when you wear a mask all day. You end up with like pillow face in the middle of the afternoon. So, ignore that. First up, a classic, Night of the Living Dead from 1968, George A. Romero. This movie is amazing. It gave me nightmares the first time I saw it when I was about 10, which, should I have been watching this movie when I was 10? Maybe not. No, it was a different thing in the 90s. But this one, it's interesting when it came out because you had the monster movies of, the 50s that were kind of the B movies they were meant to be scary, but they were also not that scary. They were fun scary. And then you had Alfred Hitchcock sort of movies, and they were more cerebral. And this is definitely still sort of a monster movie, but it's not fun scary. It's scary. Recently dead people are coming back to life, sort of. They're not back to life, they're zombies, but they're undead. And they're attacking and eating people, who are then turning into zombies themselves. Obviously, this is the basis for like every zombie movie ever, but this one is especially dark, in my opinion, because you don't have that like shining light morning after where, oh, the sun's up and that was horrible and we're so, relieved to be alive. You don't get that sort of resolution in this one. Romero really kind of guts you with this movie. So if you have not seen this movie or it's been a while, definitely check it out. It's amazing. Next up, also from 1968 actually, is Rosemary's Baby. So Rosemary's Baby is actually based on a book, also titled Rosemary's Baby, and Roman Polanski directed the film version starring Mia Farrow, and Rosemary and her husband move into an apartment building just after they're married, and their neighbors seem off. And then Rosemary winds up pregnant, and she doesn't know what's wrong, but there's something very wrong. And things just get worse, right? And you are along for the entire ride with her, where you don't know what's going on anymore, and you're convinced that all manner of things are happening, whether that's true or not. And when the baby actually is born, we find out the truth. So if you have not seen Rosemary's Baby, you have to see Rosemary's Baby. It's a classic. Where you been? If you have seen it, again, like Night of the Living Dead, this is one you should revisit. All right? Do it. You'll be happy you did. Next up, this one's totally different. Wolf Creek. It says here, right at the top here, it says, based on true events. You see that? Now, when it says based on true events, to me that makes it sound like, oh my gosh, this story actually happened and they're recreating this for me. The best I can tell, after doing some research, that's not what that means in this case. In this case, they mean that they took some events that actually happened and they imagined all the other stuff. So basically, the plot of this movie is that 3 backpackers in Australia get stranded, and the person that stops to help them out ends up kidnapping, torturing, and murdering them. So, okay, that sounds like something that could totally happen, which is why it's scary, right? But there was a couple of different people convicted in the 90s in Australia of backpacker murders. So this is not this person committed these murders of these people, we're retelling this story. That's not what this is. That doesn't mean it's not something that you might want to watch. If you're into extremely gratuitous violence, this one is for you, especially against women. Violence against women is a common theme in horror movies. We all know that. This one is so far beyond the normal level of violence against women. Roger Ebert, the film critic, actually wrote in a review of this movie that there is a line, and he doesn't know where it is, but this movie is so far past it that any of your friends that want to see this movie, you shouldn't be friends with them anymore, because obviously they're not good people. I don't know about you, that makes me want to watch something more when you say something like that. So if I were him, I might not have said that in my review. But if you're totally okay with gratuitous violence, you want to be freaked out about the idea of backpacking anywhere, but I guess specifically in Australia in this case, Wolf Creek is one to check out. Next up is one that might be a little too close to home right now, but we're going to talk about it anyway. 28 Days Later. If you're unfamiliar, it is about a rage virus that originates with a group of monkeys that an animal rights group frees, not realizing that they have this virus. And the virus is soon spread to humans, and the world implodes on itself as a result. The main character is a bike messenger who is in an accident just before all this takes place and has been in a coma. And when he wakes up, the world is a very, very different place, and he has to try to find somewhere safe. So, again, sort of zombies, but this is a lab virus situation, so might be too close to home. Mr. Ebert really liked this one, so, take that as you will. Next is one I had not heard of before when I started putting together my list. This is Hereditary from 2018. It's only a few years old. And this is about a family whose matriarch dies. And after the funeral, and they start to, go through her belongings and everything, they realize that she had a lot of really dark secrets. And they've got a really sinister inheritance. So this one is kind of a mix of a psychological thriller and a slasher. It's definitely violent. There's also some occult activity. So there's a lot happening in this movie, but it's not too much. It's not like just a big mess of stuff. It's dark, it's scary, it's intense. So if you have not heard about this movie, I would recommend it. Definitely check it out. Toni Collette, who is the star of this one, I read a review that said that she had been hesitant to do a horror movie because she normally does much more like dramatic, serious roles, not horror. And they convinced her to do this movie, and she got just wide acclaim on it. So, it's not your average slasher, but check it out. Up next, we have The Vanishing. This one is from 1993. What's really interesting about this movie is that it's a remake of a movie that originally came out in 1991. And that movie was French-Belgian, I believe. It has the same director as the original version, but they're very, very different movies. And again, with Mr. Ebert, he says that the original is a masterpiece, and then the director went to remake it for American audiences and just destroyed it. Again, when you say something like that, I'm like, well, now I have to see it, right? So The Vanishing is about a couple who are on vacation, and the woman is kidnapped, and the man is determined to find her and spends years trying to figure out what happened to her, where she went, who took her, and then he's contacted by her kidnapper and agrees to go through all of the same things that she went through in order to find out the truth about what happened to her. Apparently the ending on this one is very different from the ending in the original. I haven't seen the original, so I don't know what that one is. Roger Ebert says that one's better. I don't know. But we have this one. It's got a really good cast. It's Kiefer Sutherland and Sandra Bullock and Jeff Bridges. So if kidnappings and stalking is up your alley, give this one a check out. Then we have The Lords of Salem from Rob Zombie. So The Lords of Salem is about a DJ who receives a record that is by a band called The Lords. And when she plays it, she falls under its spell, basically. And so do some of the female listeners in her radio audience. Not so much the men, but the women fall under this spell, and they start having visions of witches and vengeful spirits, and they don't know what's happening. What I think is really interesting about this movie, Rob Zombie did a couple of movies in the Halloween franchise, and after he completed those movies, they were edited in a way that he did not agree with, and this movie is his vision of what it should be. So unlike those where he went and did something and then they came back, the ominous they came back and made changes that totally changed the movie. This is his vision 100%. You really get a feel for all of the characters. You don't understand everyone's motivations, which is part of what makes it scary, is that you don't understand why things are happening, why people are doing what they're doing. But you're not only feeling empathy for the main character, you're feeling empathy for everybody. And that's a much more human-based horror than a lot of your typical slashers where there's just a villain out to kill teenagers in the woods or whatever. So check it out. I'm kind of biased. I really like Rob Zombie in general. So now we're going to take a little bit of a turn here and talk about The Witches. The Witches is from 1990, and they are remaking it. I have a whole rant about them remaking this movie. I will not go into it here. Suffice to say, no one should be playing the head witch but Angelica Houston. She is the ultimate head witch. So, nobody else should be doing that. Anne Hathaway is not the scary ultimate witch. She's the Princess Diaries, not the witch. If you're unfamiliar with this movie, witches are having a convention at a hotel where a boy and his grandmother are staying. The grandmother for years has taught the boy how to recognize witches when they are out and about, because witches do all kinds of horrible things to children. They hate children. So he recognizes right away that all these women that are at this convention are witches, and he tries to take them down. So that's what this one is. Like I said, they are remaking it. I'm not on board with that. They didn't ask me. I got 2 more for you, and these are more horror comedy kind of situations. First is Tremors, which is also from 1990, starring Kevin Bacon. Reba McEntire's also in that. This is her first movie that she was in. And this is about a small town that discovers that there are these giant worm creatures underground, and they're coming for them. I could see how that would be scary, but it's also pretty funny. It's not straight up terrifying. And who doesn't like Kevin Bacon? I mean, come on. So, Tremors, if you're looking for something a little lighter, I guess. And then, last but not least, is What We Do in the Shadows. Not a horror really at all, but it is about vampires. And this is season 1 of the TV show. There is a movie. They're both mockumentaries. They follow the everyday, or I guess every night, lives of a household of vampires that have been living together for hundreds of years on Staten Island. So they're not what you think of as vampires. They are doing really mundane things. They're going shopping, at the drugstore. They're going to city council meetings, and it's hilarious. If you haven't seen the movie or the TV show, pick up either of them. The TV show is checked out, which is why I'm talking about, the movie was checked out, which is why I'm talking about the TV show. They're all good. Check them out. It's a lighter take on the spooky theme. Definitely not the gratuitous violence situation that we had going on earlier. So come and check those out. So that's what we have for you today. Let us know in the comments what your favorite scary movies are, especially during this time of year. And as always, if you're looking for more recommendations, either movies or books, go to our website, eastonpl.org, and put in a personalized recommendation request for Off the Shelf. And we'll get back to you with a list of books or movies that we think you would enjoy based on the information you give us. So enjoy your spooky season, and we will be back with another video soon.